Welcome to the Live It Right podcast, hosted by John and Caitlin Lindsay. We're going to be talking all things health and wellness, from food, fitness, relationships. So if you want to live your best life and live it right, join us for this conversation.
So whether you're a health enthusiast, a busy professional, or someone looking to achieve a more fulfilling life, you're in the right place. Tune in, subscribe, and join our community as we explore the path to living it right.
Let's go. Welcome back to the Live It Right podcast. We're on episode 6.
And we're diving into a little Q&A today. So we asked you guys to submit some questions. We gathered, I think, 5, kind of all over the spectrum. We thought we would jump around a little bit, but if you want to kick us off, let's go.
Cool. Let's dive in. So question 1 is probably the question I get more than anything on social media, and it is how to fix my low back pain. So first off, low back pain is very specific to you. There's so many things that could cause low back pain, but in general, from a mobility standpoint, work on your hip mobility and your thoracic spine mobility. And I would start with the hips. The hips are so connected to the low back. If your hip doesn't move super well, eventually you're going to move through some ranges of motion where the hip is so connected to the pelvis that the pelvis then moves and the low back is connected to the pelvis. So you do that time and time again. You move your low back way more than you need to. It starts to get irritated. When you have these sensations of low back tightness, chances are that's the low back being irritated from this excessive movement. So if you unlock your hips a little bit, hip rotation work like hip cars, hip flossing, 2 of my favorites, and you free up that hip from the pelvis, that's a great place to start. The thoracic spine is very similar. The thoracic spine is supposed to be a very mobile area. It can get very tight on people. And when it gets tight and you do a movement, rotate in some capacity where the thoracic spine is supposed to move, and you don't have that range of motion, your low back moves. It moves, eventually gets irritated and tight. So from a mobility standpoint, hip mobility, prioritize that first, and thoracic spine mobility.
Can I add a little something to that?
Please do.
I just want to share like a experience that I had is, so as we started cycling more, especially long distance, I noticed lower back pain. The first few months we were doing that. You were experiencing too, weren't you?
Yeah, I think we dove in so hard that we weren't used to biking for 10 hours a week.
Yeah. So, and we focused on, I guess another thing to add is core strength.
Yes.
Because focusing on our core strength really helped strengthen our lower, balance things out with your lower back. And, I always tell John, specific to women, but even with your menstrual cycle and stuff like that, strengthening your core will help that lower back pain that a lot of people deal with. There's no wrong in working on that too. So just a little something to add. Yeah,
that's something I would have poo-pooed just a few months ago is, prioritize the mobility. But especially if you're an endurance athlete, you can't do enough core strengthening. It's so, especially for a cyclist, it's so important. You're spending time in a position working that's not really a natural human movement. Right. So anything you can do to strengthen surrounding musculature is going to be huge. One final thing I meant to say, but I forgot, is also pain-free lower body strength work. So body weight squats through a range of motion that's pain-free, lunges, split squats, single leg hinges, even deadlifts if they're pain-free with light weight. Start to introduce pain-free lower body movements. If your legs are stronger, they're going to be able to absorb force better, and that force isn't going to get all the way up into the spine.
Oh, that was a good point, yeah.
Yeah. All right, question 2, sauna and cold tips for beginners.
I know you're the sauna and cold plunge guy that people would go to more than me, but I'd like to give a little bit of...
You're the girl then.
I know. Well, the thing is everyone's got a shower. And everyone's got a cold setting on the shower.
Definitely.
So there's no excuses. Yes, we have an ice barrel that we love and use 5 to 6 times a week, but you've got a cold shower. I know what he told me from day one when we were stepping into this. He'd been doing cold exposure for a while, but I would take my normal hot shower, which I can't even imagine taking anymore.
I know, yeah.
Ending with cold, 15 to 20 seconds, and then increasing that to the point that you're not even taking hot showers anymore. And then another option, if you're in a cooler weather area, like a pool during the colder months of the year will probably actually get colder than your shower. So
Yeah, that's the kind of open body of water is actually like if you have a backyard and a pool,
Yeah.
or a buddy with a backyard pool, that's awesome, or a lake somewhere close by.
Yeah.
And let's say you start in the early fall, go expose yourself, or maybe late summer, and just hit it consistently, because that water, obviously, as you get towards winter, is going to get progressively colder, and you're going to adapt. So, but yeah, the cold shower tip, that's awesome. That's how I started. I had heard years ago on a podcast someone say, like, it was motivating them for them to take a cold shower in the morning because it's like a tiny win, you get an endorphin rush. And I was like, all right, I'll try that. And
it is.
Boy, do you. Yeah, totally. So yeah, ease into it, basically, is what we're saying, whether that's through a cold shower, an open body of water, or if you have a cold tub, just regulate the temperature. Don't add a ton of ice initially, and slowly ease into it. Sauna, kind of the same thing. It's just most saunas nowadays, whether it's in your backyard or it's in a public space, you can regulate the temperature to some extent. And traditional dry steam saunas, it's going to be hotter higher up. So if you're in a public sauna, typically they have some lower area. Just sit there. I mean, try to hit a threshold of, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes. Get to a point where you're really getting hot. Maybe take 5 to 10 more breaths and then get out and build on that.
And I know, I mean, we're incredibly fortunate to have the two pieces of equipment that we do, but like contrast training studios are becoming more, I mean, they're more widespread.
If you're in a big city, there's
a lot
probably
of gyms. A lot of gyms. A couple of my friends are saying that like mainstream gyms are starting to get them, higher end, but mainstream gyms are getting them. So, I mean, wherever you are, you probably have access to contrast therapy.
Yeah.
So.
And I will give a little shout out to Ice Barrel, the apparatus we use for cold plunging. They do have a free app now.
Oh, yeah.
That has guided cold exposure on it. I think they have it's essentially a coach coaching you through breath work
it's
with
really cool.
The cold exposure. It is. And they have everything from kind of higher level, longer sessions to cold shower sessions. So that's a great way if you kind of want a buddy there with you, basically.
Well, one thing I really liked about it is they focus on breath work with it too, which
nice.
is something that I have found actually helps with my anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
Which contrast therapy does that in general, but especially like walking through that app with the breath work instructor speaking, like talking you through it. It's really great.
You tap into the breath. You tap into the benefits of cold exposure, which is getting that weight off your shoulders of the day, getting your mind clear. You tap into that faster.
Well, I'm going to ask you a quick question. What's the biggest benefit you found from contrast therapy?
I think it's that. I think I love doing it in the early evening, and it's just such a nice nightcap for me to start down regulating. To me, it always blows my mind when I wouldn't say I've had a stressful day, but I've just done a lot and I want to do more, but I just don't have the brain capacity to even get to it. And I'm like, oh no, I have this fear of, I want to get that stuff done. I need to get it done. Take an ice bath and I'm like, it just chills me out. And
Literally.
yeah, exactly. My inner voice just gets so clear and it's like, hey, you're not going to do a great job on that right now. Yeah. It's there tomorrow. Let's chill out. And it's just so impactful for reducing stress. It really is.
And if you missed our last episode, we actually were talking about our morning and evening routines, and we dive a little bit deeper into why this is so beneficial and why it's become part of our evening routine, because it prepares our bodies for peaceful rest too. Yeah. So,
and again, you do it with a cold shower. Don't think you need the bells and whistles and all that stuff. All right, question 3, biggest pet peeve.
That's an easy one for me.
What is it?
Messiness.
Okay. And you married me. So.
That's, like John always says, that's my one flaw.
It is my one flaw. I'm very messy, but it's a bad.
Hygienically, you're not.
It's a bad flaw.
It's okay.
It's funny. When it comes to carrying stuff around, I'm a pretty coordinated person when it comes to exercise and stuff. But when I'm doing, activities of daily living, I'm very clumsy. I'm prone to dropping stuff. I'll pull out a bowl that's too small and stuff gets everywhere. So
It's just, yeah, I'm
can't have it all.
incredibly type A. I mean,
Yeah.
if any, for the ladies who had been to my previous apartment before I moved in with John, it like always looked like it was not lived in.
You're vacuuming twice a day. It's
That's not a lie. What about you?
my biggest pet peeve is probably just negative people that walk into a room and just suck the life out of a room. They're the glass half empty people. Like every comment's a Debbie Downer comment. Like everybody knows those people. So
What is on one thing I've always noticed, what is on the background of your phone? What is that quote? It is his life's
I
motto.
don't have that on there anymore. I have a photo of you now. But it did say, choose to be optimistic. It feels better.
Yeah, that's your life motto, isn't it?
Yeah, I try to be. I mean, some days you get discouraged and then you take an ice bath and you feel better.
That's right. So. There you go.
All right, question 4, favorite condiments. I really like this question.
Ooh. Are we talking about homemade or store-bought?
We're talking about your favorite condiments.
I like having, my favorite condiment of mine is homemade honey mustard. But
Okay,
you have to
nice.
have,
Tell the recipe.
I mean, it is homemade mayo, which I'm assuming is probably his. Homemade mayo, it's a Dijon mustard that's imported from France. That's the trick. Honey.
How do you make the mayo?
It's all it is avocado oil and egg. And
What's the measurements? It's
1 egg, and then it's roughly about 1 1/3 to 1 1/2 cups avocado oil. And basically what you do, to give a little quick recipe, I crack an egg, I whisk it on high with a hand mixer for 30 seconds. I add 1/3 cup oil, another 30 seconds on high, another 1/3, and then repeat that until you get to 1 1/3 cups. And if it doesn't have that nice peak, if it's still, if you need more, add a little bit more. But you have to add in those small increments or you can kill.
You want to emulsify it.
Yeah,
It'll be all liquidy, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. I think the ingredients of honey mustard are my 3 favorite condiments. Your homemade mayo, because it's so versatile for things like honey mustard, but also just creamy salad dressings, aiolis, like adding dried herbs to it, getting fancy, a fancy mustard, and honey. Like those 3 things are so convenient, are so easy to just make nice stuff with.
Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, if you listen to the Healthy Eating 101 episode, I will say, for those of you, I know there are a lot of you out there, because I've taken polls on this before, that refuse, just no matter what, you will not make your own condiments. I respect it. It's fine, because I make most of mine. If you're looking for a brand, Primal Kitchen, any of their condiments, marinades, rubs, whatever it may be, that is a tried and true. I can tell you, no matter what you pick up off the shelf, it's healthy ingredients and it's made well.
Yeah.
So
I'll vouch for the homemade mayo real quick though. I've made it before, so I did make a mess while I was making it, but it still tasted pretty good.
Yeah.
So not completely impossible to make.
And it lasts in the fridge for like 10 days.
Yeah.
If it lasts that long.
Easy to make. And I'm so spoiled eating that like even the good healthy mayos still have this like tang to me that's not quite as good.
Well, they have to have more than 2 ingredients in it for it to sit on a shelf.
Yeah, there's something tangy about it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
All right, 5th and final question. Speaking of food, best meal you've had recently?
Homemade or out? Both?
Let's go out.
Out. I had, and there will be more on this later.
Because I'll shout you out right after this.
Oh,
so.
okay. More on this to come. But I had a sourdough base bagel breakfast sandwich at a little place in Roswell. And
Georgia.
Yes. And for those of you that don't know, I have been gluten-free for, I can't
10
even do
years
math.
probably?
10,
Easily,
12 years maybe. But more on that later. But they use the same sourdough base they use for their sourdough bread to make homemade bagels. And I mean, for someone who hasn't had a real bagel in like 13 years,
just hits.
It hit.
Nice.
That's for sure. What about you?
Meal you made might have been 2 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Lemon mascarpone risotto with prawns, or shrimp as we say in the States. That was just like a decadent, like fine dining at its best right there in the Lindsay household.
I'd have
It's
to.
really good.
That probably is one of my favorite.
That's one of those things I could eat every day for, I could probably go for like a month before I got tired of it. I'm prone to doing that. So
Yes, he is very prone to doing that.
yeah,
I'd honestly have to agree.
that was so good.
That was really
Yeah.
good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've made lately that was.
I mean, that just stands out. It was unique
Yeah,
and
I agree.
fantastic.
I agree. What about out? Anything that you've eaten out?
Not really. I haven't been out that much recently. So
Well, you were raving about that bread from Boone.
yeah, got some good homemade bread from Boone, North Carolina. They did some special things. But still, I
nothing-
mean,
yeah.
we're talking lemon mascarpone risotto and some bread. So
That's true.
yeah,
Well, I need to get back in the kitchen and create some
do,
other
yeah.
stuff. Sorry.
I know.
I'm slacking over here. It's been 3 weeks. Well, I mean, short to the
Yeah,
point.
that's it.
Thanks for submitting those. Those are
5
good
solid
questions.
questions. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. If you have future questions, we'll definitely ask for them on our social medias, but don't hesitate to send either of us a message. That's a good way for us to get content to chat about.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, again, if you like the podcast, subscribe, rate it, share it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, we appreciate the listen.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.